everybody, how's it going? It's the Fuzz. So, with the balance patch only 3 days away, I decided to do something a little bit amusing. It's time for another Review the Fuzz. And this is where I take a look at a previous video of some kind and see what if my predictions came true. I did this for the Valiant Dawn expansion where I kind of went over the most significant cards. So for this one, this is the top 10 most broken and top 10 worst cards of the expansion as they came out without any patches or anything. So we're going to take a look at, were these cards really so broken? Which ones were nerfed? Which ones weren't nerfed? Which ones were buffed? And let's see just how wrong I was on some of these cards, because it's always fascinating for me to listen to myself talk about things that are clearly wrong sometimes. So anyways, the way that this works is there's a top 10, but there's also a few honorable mentions. So let's just get going, shall we? By the way, I have not watched these ahead of time, so I don't actually remember all the cards that I put on. I just kind of want to do it as a first impression in a way, so alright, I'm along for the ride along with everybody. Let's see what I said. For the honorable mentions, and yeah. So, honorable mention number 6. The Descendant of Divinity. So when we first looked at this card, we thought, wow, it's a 4/6 with 3 speed. Are you crazy? With a ridiculously powerful effect as well. Well, the funny thing about this card is, yes, it's undoubtedly quite powerful, but the effect where it can only attack or block alone is interesting in that the Descendant is like the opposite of a win more card, because if you are already ahead, the Descendant doesn't actually help you get further ahead because it probably won't be able to attack, so it'll just be relegated to defense. Nonetheless, it's still, of course, a tremendous body. 4/6 can kill just about anything, and being able to attack 2 things, it's no joke. But so actually, it turns out I was right here in not calling it like the most OP card, because the drawback does prevent it from actually winning more. If you look at the Hermelian Priest deck or any Hermelian deck, they don't run this card because they can't double attack with it. So it turned out to be actually fine, and it's not currently seeing play. So I may have slightly overestimated it, but it wasn't actually as powerful as we thought at first. When we first saw this, we thought it was gonna be insane. This one, the honorable mention number 5, Forced Labor for Rage. Man, this card is pretty juicy. 3 Tortured Orcs is pretty powerful value on the board. I mean, 3 2/3s, that's a lot on turn 4. But the difference is you have to be able to activate them for them to do anything. And there's actually not that many reliable ways to do this. One is the Champion of the Revolt, which simply removes the slave tag. And the other is something like Blood Frenzy, which just lets you assign damage to these dudes and let them actually be able to do something. It's pretty powerful when it works, but because you have to use a secondary card to make it work, it's much more fair than some of these other cards. But still, I think this could easily create a deck, like a Rage Dominion Slave deck, because 3 Tortured Orcs, that's a lot of board presence. That's no joke. So yeah, this card never really took off alongside with the other slave stuff. Although recently, in the Masters Tournament, Vanguard proved everyone wrong by running this card with Burning Rage. Though, to be fair, at the time, Burning Rage was not nerfed yet. It was still the old version, if I remember correctly. And this card, yeah, it's obviously supposed to be with that slave deck, that Dominion shenanigans, but the whole thing just not quite good. Maybe after the balance patch, it might be something. With the current Burning Rage, it's quite obscene if you get it, but yeah, it's a cool card. I like it, and I hope it becomes a deck someday. But at the moment, it's actually not that OP. That's no joke. So I'm looking forward to trying out this card. Honorable mention number 4, the Duke Value. That's what I like to call it. Duke Hartford represents a ridiculous value proposition for the corruption deck, specifically the zombie deck, where you can just resurrect several things multiple times over. But the only reason he's not higher up is because you have to build your deck around him, and the zombie selection is not great, and if you put a weakness emblem on those things, they get a lot worse. Zombie Legionnaire is just a militia, that's like whatever. Then the Abhorrent Ghoul becomes a Zombie Legionnaire. Insatiable Ghoul becomes like a 2-3, but it has anti-synergy with this. And cards like Zombie Giant and Hydra, you don't really want to run. So that prevents it from being like way ridiculous, but it's still, if you're playing zombies, and even if you just get like 1 or 2 things with him, it's still amazing. So actually, based on the fact that I didn't mention it, I believe the Zombie Necromancer was not a zombie at the time, and was only recently made a zombie, because otherwise I would have mentioned it, right? Bringing back zombie. In fact, this card ended up being insane because of Zombie Necromancer being a zombie. You could bring it back and all your dudes would get deadly. I think that was not always the case, which is why I might not have thought of it as that overpowered. But once that happened and Zombie Necromancer became a zombie, it was insane because you were bringing it back and like 2 zombies and everybody had deadly. And it was just ridiculous value. The card is quite powerful with the Zombie Necromancer, and I think if we ever get any other zombies, Hartford is always going to be on the horizon as a potentially powerful card. At the moment, zombies are not doing very well because the change to the Abhorrent Ghoul, where you have to take 3 damage, that really sucks when you're facing like Slave Gladiator aggressive decks, and the 3 extra damage you do to yourself, well, they're very happy that you've accelerated their win condition. Anyways, and Beatdown, as we have come to call him. This is the other giant order card. He's higher on the list than the Descendant because he doesn't have the drawback, and he has the option to be even bigger, or he can gain Lifebound. You know, it's a pretty flexible card. Being a 3-coster, you can play with Kayanu. I don't know how good that'll be, but it's an option. And in general, it's just nice to cost less mana. I think if Order ever tries to build like a, I don't know, a value deck, I guess, Gomer will be an insane addition to it. With 4 aspects, you can create an absolutely ridiculous creature. It could be a 5-6 with 3 speed. It could be a 5-4 with Lifebound and 3 speed. It's a beat stick. It is a beat stick, but beat stick pretty much defines this card. It's played in the Hermelian Priest. I mean, because it's a priest, which is great. But Gomer is absolutely insane with Hermelian because he can do 10 damage by himself, and it's just an absolutely ridiculous card. Now you think, why isn't this higher on the list? Well, if you were around for the expansion, we had some interesting cards that were released. Though, to be fair, some of the cards on this list that I remember end up not being as powerful as I thought, while Gomer is certainly one of the big winners to come out of the expansion. And it's what is letting Order even be on the map as their super finisher card. The card is really good. Honorable mention number 2, Erulak Warborn. So another like really big creature. It seems like every aspect got one of these, more or less. So Erulak is a 5-5 unstoppable. That's a pretty respectable body, and his abilities are very interesting. The damaged creatures you control gain 1 attack is supposed to synergize with these cards like Blood Frenzy, so it'll kind of give them more attack. It's a cool idea. Your tortured orcs will have 3 attack each, which is pretty nice. But it's the second ability that really interests me, essentially being able to wipe the board by himself if you have enough mana. You know, if you play him and then you have 9 mana, you can do AoE of 3 damage. It's, you know, because that takes a lot of time and mana, he isn't higher up on the list, but the card looks really powerful, and once we see a lot of the Dominion stuff get tuned down, I think we'll definitely see cards like this and Battle-Scarred Elder see some play, and I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to this meta of just bigger creatures. So, a note on Battle-Scarred Elder. Battle-Scarred Elder actually did end up seeing play in decks like Kayanu because of it's much easier to splash and costs less mana and has the card draw. Poor Erulak never really made it into Constructed, which is shocking, honestly. Like, when I first saw this card, I thought it was just ridiculous, but it turns out that just there was no good deck for it. With Burning Rage now kind of gone, okay, here's the reality of Spellweaver meta. The decks that are in mid-range, control, and aggro are all very well defined, and any deck that can't compete with them is never going to be competitive. So for aggro, you've got aggro is good because they got absurd combos with like Slave Gladiator and stuff. Control has like instant win condition or unlimited value with Grand Reunion. And then mid-range, you've got the Priests, which are kind of resistant against aggro, but have like that mid-range burst thanks to Hermelion. So Erulak, you know, a mono rage deck just isn't the thing. So Erulak is not a bad card, but it just ends up not being playable. I'm hoping that the balance patch brings a little bit of peace to the world where these kind of mid-rage decks come about, because I want to play with Erulak. It seems like a really awesome card. Maybe one day his time will come. He's waiting for his horde to become the most dominant force on the battlefield. If you'll notice, I have not named any Dominion cards yet. Yes, 7 of the top 10 are in Dominion. Ridiculous. Anyways, Slave Gladiator. The reason it's on the list is because it's a 0 mana card. 0 mana cards are dangerous, and this guy can be very easily played, you know, in addition to your regular turn. Just throw him out there for 0. Tremendous tempo. And with Reverence, it's basically 0 mana redraw. So yeah, a lot of shenanigans. But again, he actually seems kind of fair compared to these other cards that are ahead of him, but still quite powerful, just because it's 0 mana. Anything that costs 0 mana is potentially very powerful. Seems fair, right? So suffice to say, Slave Gladiator is most likely going to be nerfed because it's absolutely insane. Now, the 0 mana redraw with a Reverence was true until Reverence was changed and you didn't draw unlimited cards anymore. Now, interestingly, some of the cards that are going to be mentioned in this list are absolutely ridiculous, but Slave Gladiator should have been higher on the list because it really enables absurd tempo pushes, and the drawback is like almost irrelevant since you usually aren't running any other slaves, maybe the Minotaur, but you usually won't run that many Minotaurs, and you almost never have slave problems. So it's basically just a 0 mana golem, which is absurd, and it's getting nerfed. So I probably underestimated this card. I don't think anybody really knew just how insane it was gonna be when you combine it with Aristocrat and like the Rage 1-drops and all that. And then, of course, Jacquerie got buffed to be a 2-aspect card. But yeah, it's dangerous. Definitely a dangerous card. And we saw that a card like this is only going to get more insane with additions of cards like Inherited Wealth and the Centaur Illusionist, both of which make the card even better. And now we move on to actual top. Oh, so that wasn't even on the list? Oh my god. That shit should be like number 5 at least. But yeah, 10. Starting us off, the champion of the Revolt. It's basically, when it enters the field, draw a card. But you get to search it out. Now, it's a bit limited, but usually if you're playing him, you'll be playing slaves. So it is basically draw a card. But it's not just that. It removes the slave tag from them. So it's just amazing, especially with cards like Forced Labor. You play him, all your guys can attack. Also, other powerful slaves like Ogre Captive are just activated. So that Slave Rage Dominion deck, this guy's going to be the centerpiece of it and one of the most powerful cards. Yeah, it's weird that this card is not seeing more play than I thought it would. But again, the Slave deck never really took off, although Vanguard's Burning Slaves does use this card, and it's pretty good there, but the Burning Slaves are not, like, competitive, really. They're, like, maybe tier 2, give or take. This card, though, I imagine once enough support exists for that deck, it's likely to come back, because the card is clearly very good. The searching is very powerful in Spellweaver, because if you have your search target in hand, you can just Divine Offer it away and get it back. So it's at worst to draw a card. But you can search out the Slave Gladiators, you can search out Minotaurs. It's really good. The stat line kind of sucks, But the fact that it removes the slave tag, it's kind of in a similar position that Celestial Blossom is, where it's objectively a good card, but the deck that it's supposed to be in just isn't ready yet. What's keeping this card back is the fact that it is 3 mana, 1 aspect. If it was, for example, 2 mana, 2 aspects, it would be really good, because you could play it on curve in more decks. 2 aspect, 2 mana is better than 3 mana, 1 aspect always. But maybe we'll see the return of Champion, but turned out to not be as powerful as I thought. Mostly because the deck just wasn't that good. And if you're just playing him with something like Raging Minotaur, Gladiator, and play it immediately with him, then it's kind of like a slightly better Gibbo and run. So the reason Soul Flames is on the list is because it's basically hard removal without a condition. You know, Devious Plot, you have to have a creature. Sudden death, the creature has to be damaged or something, or wounded in some ways. With Soul Flames, just kill whatever you want. Yes, you take some damage, but the minion has life gain, so it's not a problem. And it even has a secondary effect where you can sack your own creature and gain some life. Now, yes, the life gain is equal to its, like, base HP, so there's no shenanigans with Power Seeker. But still, you know, if you're in a desperate position, just sack a Raging Minotaur or something, or some other big creature, get a bunch of life. But, no, it's a great card, and it might even just replace Assassinate altogether. Yeah, it pretty much replaced Assassinate altogether, because it kills so many more things. The secondary effect is very rarely used, but no, Soul Flames is absolutely great. It's absolutely insanely limited. It is just a great card. It's fair that it's not higher on the list because it's just a removal. I mean, removal is never going to be like super OP because it is fair in that you do take some damage, but Coronis, for instance, can gain life back with the Ravens, so they don't mind Soul Flamesing something and taking like 3 damage. So yeah, this card will continue to see play, I imagine. And yeah, it's hard removal for 2 mana with a secondary kicker in an aspect that has life gain. Yeah, great card. Together, because it's the same but has no condition. Yeah, you lose some. You see me skipping around a little bit is because, again, I actually don't know where these cards are at. I'm kind of going in here unprepared, but it's like a casual video, right? So I'm sure JBix will come up with some explanation for this sometimes. But the fact that he can summon a 4/4 with Swift is tremendously powerful. And if the 4/4 gets killed, like if it runs into a Karthus or something, summon another one. You can even summon Silverfang, sack him with Stronghold Metropolis, and then summon another Silverfang. So just the value this guy represents is tremendous. Also a really powerful value card if you just get him and the 4/4. And the constant threat of 4/4 wolves, it's pretty insane. It's a really good card. And I'm actually really glad it exists because it gives nature that late game punch that they just never had before. You know, and I like him better than Elgaron because he is playable early. He can be used as a mid-range creature even, you know, 3/3 body isn't bad at all. So, great card. So, Mr. Wolftongue, not as insane as I thought. Mainly, it's his play in Grand Reunion Kayano where you get to 4 aspects, and you pretty much only use him for the 4 aspect ability where it can burst in some extra damage. It is a great value card, but I thought this card would herald like the arrival of some control nature. And yes, Grand Reunion Kayano is a control deck, but Wolftongue isn't like the centerpiece of it. It's Life Force Incarnate that really allowed the deck to come into creation. If Horizons is ever removed, Wolftongue will get less good, but not necessarily. I mean, it's never going to be a bad card because it's great value. I don't know if they're ever going to make any more wolves, but if they do, hey, Wolftongue is going to be good. It's an elf and a shaman. So the reason I thought it was so good, it was mostly because it has so many different decks it could fit into. Nature shamans, if they ever become a thing. Elves, if they ever come back, they could just play this, because why not? But yeah, right now only Grand Reunion, but that's mostly because the meta is very strictly limited right now, and that's the only deck that can really support him. But still good card. Absolutely insane and limited. Moving on to number 7, Vampiric Ashes. So this might just be one of the best 2-drops in the game. Really, the only other competition is, yeah, Shadowstep Assassin, which is also in Dominion. It's a 0/5. And Silverfang. 5 that can't attack. Kind of like Religor, but 5 health? I mean, almost no creature can actually kill this. Except Assassin. On turn 2. Other than Assassin. It's tremendously strong on defense. But it's not just that. It has the ability to become a 2-3 attacker. Just like the Tortured Orc. So it can actually fight back against aggro. It's insane. I mean, if you want to play like a control deck, you just throw this in, and Assassin, you've got like the best 2-drops in the game that can compete with anything else. It can protect you entirely. This can even become a 4-1 if you have the mana and just hit the face for 4. With Vampirism, it can become a 5-2 Lifebound that gives you 5 life when it attacks. So, just with the old Vampirism, that is, not with the new one. Just an absolutely ridiculous 2-drop, and it probably should be nerfed because... Okay, so I'm gonna stop myself right there. This card is a weird one. Objectively, it's very good, and yet it's almost never played. So what's the problem? Well, the problem has to do with the fact that New Horizons exists, and so Dominion Control doesn't run this card because they just run Power Surge and Horizons, and they just ramp right past the early game into the late game. So yes, you could in theory run this and Assassin for your early game, but why do that when you could just ramp to Cataclysm, get all your mana back with basic Despina, and then play like other broken stuff? So it's a real shame. But if Horizons is removed, and I don't know if it will be, but I feel like Horizons is responsible for a lot of stuff. So I would love to see, like, if there's one card that you could remove to really change the meta, it's New Horizons. So I think if that were the case, Vampiric Ashes would indeed be good, because then you would have to play early game, so you don't just lose to aggro. And you would look to this card, of course, because it can hold off early game, and it can even kill small dudes. So we'll have to see. Until then, though, it's not going to be played. So, it's like I was right, but I was also wrong. I was wrong because I didn't anticipate that, like, Dominion was going to play, like, that much ramp. And that's partly due to Red Dragon being an instant win condition, and Shifting Aurite giving you, like, a ridiculous damage burst as well. So that, you don't need this. Spoiler, if I remember correctly, Shifting Aurite is not on this list. Yeah, I didn't know. I didn't know that KFC was gonna open a franchise on Spellweaver. A lesson for the future. Anyways, Union has enough, like, really good cards, but maybe it's okay, but whatever. I'm not gonna get into details right now, but it's an amazing 2-drop. Moving on to number 6, Beiying Minotaur, and this is where we start to get into the ridiculous cards. Like, that is a lot of stats for a 4-drop. 5/5 that has 3 speed on your turn. I don't know. I mean, it kills basically every other creature that comes before it. What else could even challenge it? Assassin because it has deadly, you know, and Temptress of the Sea because they have deadly, but 5/5 with 3 speed? That's absolutely ridiculous. And yes, it deals 2 damage to you, but it's gonna do 5 damage to your opponent. And again, you have access to Vampirism, and if you have Vampirism, the effect actually cancels old Vampirism again. With the new Vampirism, it doesn't counter anything out because he'll damage you, but then the Lifebound will trigger and give you back the life. So yeah, it's ridiculous. Yes, it's a slave, but that actually makes him better because that means you can search him out with Champion of Revolt. This is one of the reasons Champion of the Revolt is so insane. It's because you can search this card. And it's really funny because you can obviously tell it's supposed to be a rage card. Okay, I guess that captured him or something. But he's gonna have to be tuned up because he makes cards, these other big cards, just seem kind of crappy. Like, even cards like Otriska that Dominion has, the 5/5 flyer for 4 mana that makes you sack a creature. This is just better. And it's a bit of a shame. And it makes cards like Undead Hydra laughable in comparison. It's the same body as Undead Hydra. Yes, it loses Unstoppable, but it has 3 speed. Which is probably better, honestly. And it costs 2 less mana. The comparison is so one-sided in his favor. It's just hilarious. And the reason I think he has to be changed is because if you hit the cards above him, he'll just become the next problem card because it's just so powerful on turn 4. Now, okay, so this was one of the cards I definitely overestimated. See, I thought it was absolutely insane, and the cards above him were mostly nerfed, and yet Minotaur... Okay, Minotaur started seeing more play because with the rise of these aggressive decks, because it's a 5/5 with 3 speed, but it's not even because it's being searched out, it's just because it's a big beat stick. Elric can copy it, right? However, it turns out that the 2 damage you take and the fact that it's 1 speed are actually much bigger drawbacks than I thought. Because if you're facing another aggressive deck, then you play this and your board is not any better. In fact, you just dealt 2 damage to yourself and they're going to start hitting your face. And if you can't race them and you have to trade, then you're going to be taking more damage. So, yeah, it's weird. It's just like with Underworld Scourge. The extra 2 damage that it deals made it so much worse and so much less broken. And it's the same with this. I mean, I still think it's a very powerful card, but not as powerful as I thought. That said, it does make Undead Hydra complete trash. Atriska, not exactly trash, but kind of trash. And especially the Murderous Chieftain look really bad in comparison because, yeah, the damage, you take some damage, but if a mid-range deck with like vampirism ever comes about, this card will be absolutely crazy. Of course, in this meta, it can't really happen because, again, the meta is very limited. Depending on what happens in the patch, we might see more of Minotaur. I am really shocked that it wasn't, like, insane. I mean, to be fair, Atriska and Murderous Chieftain didn't see any play at all. Atriska, very slight in that Enoch Sack deck. And, yeah, Raging Minotaur definitely saw the most play of them, but not as OP as I thought. But I think if aggro were to slow down, this card would be insane. Because for a mid-range deck, it's a monster. Like, if you don't have to worry about dying to aggro, this card, when combined with Elric, for instance, really good. We'll see if it continues to be really good. But right now, it's looking solid. Now we move on. Now we move on to the fun category. We can't have a creature this big. Sorry. Anyways, moving on to number 5. Scatador's Bidding is a card I have renamed to Scatador's Bitching, because that exactly is what your opponent does when you play this card. Especially it's a really miserable experience. Basically, when you play it, you start gaining like 4 to 5 life every turn, and your opponent starts losing life every turn. So it becomes a really, really difficult game where, unless they're already about to kill you, you'll just gain so much life they can't kill you anymore, and they start losing life, and it just becomes a miserable experience. And you might think, well, you have to be spending mana. Well, because of some of the cards above this one, wasting mana is not a problem at all. And you can easily waste like 6 or 7 mana every turn and just gain minimum of 4 life or more, and, you know, even just gaining 10 life. Oh god, I hate this card. And now this card was actually nerfed. They made it so that you have to choose one of these 2 effects, so you either gain life or you burn them. And I still hate it, because it's just a passive heal effect. It's so uninspired, and usually they'll choose healing, but it does feel so depressing to play against this, because they can just sit back and gain life, and because they have Cataclysm, like you try to pressure the board, they just wipe it, and they get like 3 more life. It just feels completely hopeless. Now, you know, aggro decks don't care, they'll just kill you. Grand Kayano has enough value where they can keep going, and they have Unicorn, more importantly. But I still would like this to be redesigned. Right now, less so that it's overpowered, and more so that it's just boring. It's a 4-aspect legendary spell, and all it does is heal you. Yeah, it's really sad. But no, the card was oh god, I absolutely despised this card when it came out. Rather tame in comparison to the 4 cards that are above it, and that's a bit scary. Anyways, number 4, and this is where we started to get absolutely ridiculous category. Fleeting Fairy at number 4. The obvious problem with this card is it represents an unlimited source of creatures. You can just play it. It's always a blocker, if nothing else. But if that wasn't bad enough, with Stronghold Metropolis, you can play it, sack it to draw an extra card, and then just play it again. And once you have more mana later in the game, you just can sink mana and get free advantage. It's a platform for a devious plot. It can stop attackers from cards like Minotaur, and it's really obnoxious. If it wasn't for the bug that makes it kind of mess up when you have several of these on the board, this card would be absolutely ridiculous. And it is absolutely ridiculous because it's just unlimited creatures for, everybody. And I think that's a bit dangerous. It also has 3 speed, so it's a really great blocker. I think one of the simplest fixes for this card is to make it 2-aspect. So you cannot sacrifice it with Stronghold. You should not be able to sacrifice this with Stronghold. That should have been the first thing the developers thought of when they saw this card. But, they missed it. I mean, I'm not blaming them or anything. They work really... Okay, so we're not gonna get into the developer praise section. So yeah, this card was absolutely ridiculous. You could just sacrifice it for card advantage. You could just keep replaying it. It was really dumb. But yeah, the interaction with Stronghold Metropolis was definitely the worst, because it meant that you literally just had a card draw engine and an unlimited blocker engine, and you basically had decks with this, like cloning vats, and like the rest didn't matter so much because you could just keep doing this forever. Oh, and like Scatter's bidding. I think this was an interesting idea. Making it 2-aspect would be fun, and I wonder if that card would be OP if you couldn't sack it with Stronghold. Possibly, but if it was 2-aspect, we wouldn't have so quickly discovered its brokenness, and I think it may even have survived the series of nerfs, whereas right now it was completely redesigned into a card that's mostly garbage because the fairies are kind of bad. I don't know. I think this card was fun. Yes, it was broken, but it was fun. So I would like to see a 2-mana, 2-aspect version of this and see if that's still broken. That might be interesting. But, I don't know. Rip Fleeting Fairy. Yeah, I'm going to fast forward the developer praise section here. On to number 3. Dr. Styx is a card which, even if it wasn't a demon, I think would be a problem. Just because it's basically like an early game Karthus. Being able to hit a creature with cost 2 or less, there's a ton of targets. Any aggressive deck, you got guaranteed targets. Most mid-range decks, even, you have targets. Almost any deck, other than, I don't know, Vamplamp maybe, you have targets. But it's not just that. You can hit artifacts, you can hit Reflector, you can hit Vats, you can hit Obelisk of Unity, you can hit Dark Portal. It's just way too flexible. And okay, because it's a demon, the card is absolutely godlike and makes demons completely impossible to beat because they just search this out for 1 less mana, kill your creatures, hit for damage, search for another one, kill the next creature, and you just cannot stop this. But even without the demon tag, I think the card is an issue. And it cannot remain this way because, even disregarding the fact that it's a 6/4 late game, just as a 4/2 that can kill whatever blocker you have, it's just really rough. It counters so many things. It can kill Nienna. It can kill Namir, Cavalry Field Captain, Summoner Druid, Force Mage Protector. My goodness, it's just... Alright, so this one, I was completely right for the wrong reasons. So yes, the card was godlike, but only because it was a demon. Because it was a demon and you could search it out, demons had an absolutely unstoppable curve and basically couldn't lose if they got their curve going. The way this was nerfed, they kept the demon tag, they lowered his attack by 1, but they made it so that you take 2 damage when you use the effect. And that was enough to actually keep demons from being insane, because it turns out you could not afford the 1 damage. Of course, the loss of Word of Pain also hurt, but yeah, it actually mattered a lot. So I thought if you keep the card with the effect, even without it being a demon, it would be insane, but actually no one's playing it. Right now, you could play this card as a 3-2 that can kill something, and then if you go to 4 aspect, it's a 5-4, unstoppable, but nobody's playing it. That's weird, right? So I was definitely wrong there. I thought it would just be an insane value card. One important thing is this also hit cloning VATs, which that was one of the reasons it was run. But with cloning VATs also nerfed, yeah, we haven't really seen him. Outside of demons, it's just not played. I mean, that's probably because corruption just isn't like played right now. Again, it doesn't really fit anywhere in the current meta. Yeah, it would be a great counter to like Priest because you could kill Namir with it and stuff. That's really good, but like against aggro, it comes too late to save you. Well, probably. And against control, it does absolutely nothing. I wonder if just like with cards like Erulak and Minotaur, are we gonna see more of this once like the critically broken cards we have now that are dominating the meta are dealt with? If we deal with the ridiculous aggro and New Horizons, Cataclysm, maybe. I don't know yet. Maybe hitting Horizons is enough. Would we see more of this? I mean, if Corruption ever wanted to play like a mid-range deck, I can't imagine not running this. It just seems way too good. Because if you're not playing demons, losing 2 life is not that big of a deal. Which is what you do now. You lose 2 life when you use it. And yeah, it's a 3-2 instead of a 4-2, but that's not that much worse, actually. And then 5-4 versus 6-4 doesn't change that much. So, yeah. I hope we see more of Mr. Sticks. By the way, if you're wondering where the name Dr. Sticks came from, Dr. Sticks is my nickname from work. But, I brought this over to this card because I saw a dude made of sticks, and I thought, you know what, that's a perfect name for a Spellweaver card. I wanted to bring a little bit of fuzz into the game, and I gave it that name, which quickly caught on in the community. It just like Shifting Aura got named Chicken, and everybody called it Chicken. This was the Dr. Sticks. That was, I mean, we kind of reinforced it on the podcast with Jodo, Peacekeeper, and Laurentiel. Was it Laurentiel? Whoever the 4th person was. So yeah, or maybe it was Boltor. I don't know. So yeah, I was right for the wrong reasons. That's actually fascinating, and it does teach me a little bit about the meta of the game. Kills a bunch of creatures instead of just hurting them a little bit. So I can't believe I'm about to say this, but this card makes Blood-Seeking Mutants seem fair. And that is quite a feat. Oh well. Moving on to number 2. Prinhop the Nightshade. And oh, how I'm starting to hate this card. Prinhop the Nightshade is literally a turn 3 Karthus. Yes, it's slightly delayed, but it's a turn 3 Karthus. You play it, you kill a creature for free, and then you've got a 2-3 body. Okay, it's not a great body, but once you get to 3 aspects, it's a 3-4 with 4 speed. So it's a better body than Karthus. Not only that, she can kill anything. Not just 4 or lower, anything. And she costs less mana, and less aspects, and has a better body. Yes, if they remove their own creature, you don't get Prinhop, but then it's still basically removal. So that's still fine for you. And if they don't remove it, it's as if you played Kayanu. It's as if you put her under Kayanu without having to have Kayanu. But instead of her coming out with a Might emblem, she kills something. Last time I checked, killing something is a lot better than putting a Might emblem on a friendly creature. So this card... this card just trivializes so many decks, because if you're trying to play these big creatures like Iron Beatstick, Prinhop just kills it. So this is probably my biggest overestimation of all. I mean, by far the biggest. So Prinhop is the card on the list that is the highest that was never actually changed. And it's still the same card that it was. Oh, my hat can't even contain itself. It's still the same as it was. And yet, it's barely, if ever, seen. So what gives? Is this not a good card? How did I get this wrong? Well, it turns out that the delay is actually a big deal, because yeah, you could hit Ironbeard, but guess what? Then they activate Hermelion and hit you for 10 damage. that turns out to be quite significant. And this actually falls in the same category as the Vampiric Ashes, when it's objectively a great card, but it's just not necessary. The way Dominion Control plays is ramp, 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 Cataclysm, maybe some Karthus here and there, and then Dragon. Now, I compare this card to Karthus, but the difference is Karthus, A, kills the card immediately, and B, gives you life immediately. That's significant. That actually makes a big difference between Prinhop and Karthus. But, yeah, I just never imagined that Dominion would become such a one-dimensional deck, the control version anyways, where they just play Ramp, Cataclysm, Hero Power, Dragon. That's it. Oh, and Chicken being completely insane, of course. And Prinhop just wasn't needed. Now, to be fair, you could probably put this into your deck, and it would be fine. But the thing is, what are you really hitting with this? Like, you're gonna play it on turn 3 against aggro? You wanna be ramping, because picking off one of their slave gladiators or something isn't actually gonna do that much. And against, again, Hermelion, yeah, they're gonna, like, hero power you. I suppose against priests it would be okay, but again, against them, their bigger threat to you is also, like, their own life gain. And you can't just let an Ironbeard live for a turn, because it can kill you in one turn. So Prinhop turns out to be just not fitting in the meta right now, which is shocking to me. It really, really is. But just like all these other cards, if that chain is broken, if you know, New Horizons get hit, if aggro gets hit, I cannot imagine Prinhop not being run. Because if you're looking for value cards, it's pretty hard to beat this one. I mean, it's, again, on 3 aspects, it's an insane body, and it gets you a free kill. It's great. It's just, right now, it's not quite needed. Now, one interesting thing is, because it's a vampire, along with Karthus, Vampiric Ashes, and Bloodseeking Mutant, it has powerful synergy with Vampirism, because you can play Vampires and immediately give her Lifebound, and 1 attack, which is pretty good. So that could be that mid-range Dominion deck that might come about if, you know, if there's ever any room for it in the meta. And I'm hoping that the patch brings out a lot of this stuff. But yeah, Prinhop just ended up being just an okay card. Really, I'm still shocked. But I just did not anticipate how the meta would be shaped. And yeah, this actually was a card the developers mentioned they thought they should have changed, but chose not to. And it turns out they were kind of right. It was not necessary. Now, in the future, maybe. I don't know if it'll be necessary to change her or not. At the moment, though, she's certainly not a threat. But in the future, but, you know, we'll deal with it when we get to it. We're always going to have some slightly unbalanced cards. But right now, we're focusing more on getting rid of, or like nerfing the most impactful, the ones that have been hounding the meta for the longest time. So, Prinhop turns out to be not as insane as I thought. Started watching this video is cloning that. A card that I think will basically single-handedly eclipse the entire meta and will be literally the center point of every deck. Some decks will run it and abuse it. Other decks will run 4-off cards that remove this, like Gnome Power Engineers, like Dr. Styx removes this, like Test of Time. Just because this card is just the best thing out there. It's a Tombs of the Damned that summons better creatures that cost less mana. Now, yes, you have to pay that 2 mana, but what pisses me off the most about this card is that you can summon the creature in the middle of combat, and you can use it to block something, to intercept an attacker. Your opponent is just sitting on this card with 2 mana, and you can't attack, because they'll just summon an Enchained Soul. Right? Or, if they already have a creature, they could summon the Moonsteel Miner and give something a Might Emblem. Or just summon the 2/2 Soldier, which is better than a Zombie Legionnaire. And if you don't attack, they're gonna summon it anyway, and then next turn, they'll just sacrifice it for a free card for 0 mana. And again, it is not legendary. So once you have several of these on the board, you just start producing entire armies of tokens, and you literally do not have to play another card again. Cloning Vats by themselves can produce Might Emblems, 3-speed flying blockers, and just good 2-3 bodies or 2-2 bodies that are not slaves. You don't need anything else once you have a couple Vats. So this card is overpowered on several levels, and it needs a severe nerf. So this card got a severe nerf. It turns out what really made it over the top, I mean, the summoning in the middle of combat was annoying as hell. And I think it's a warning for the future that having abilities that let you do that, summoning stuff in the middle of combat, is really lame. It's that Facian Mercenary that made a difference. It was a 2-2 with 2 speed. The reason it was such a big deal was because you could summon one of those and then summon one Tortured Orc. And so, by itself, Vats could produce just consistent armies of soldiers, right? But yeah, that in the middle of combat crap was just so infuriating. It became not fun to play against. And indeed, what we saw was people running 4 Vats, and like everything else was just stuff around Vats, and people answering it by running like a couple Doctor Sticks or something. I mean, right now, the current version of Vats, I think, is perfectly fine, because it only summons slaves, so it's not gonna win you the game by itself. And the fact that it can't summon in the middle of combat, that's really good. So, good job on nerfing this one. It was ridiculously obnoxious. Right now, it's kind of just a cool card. It's not playable and constructed, but it might be. I mean, it's a good value engine, if you think about it. If you get it with Stronghold Metropolis, it's like a draw a card for 2 mana every single turn. I imagine it might come back alongside with Prinhop, alongside with these other cards, if we get a big enough shake in the meta where people try out new decks, new cards. And Cloning Vat, if you're playing a control deck, it's good. Like, it just gets you creatures and can get you Might Emblems, because the Moonsteel Miner can do that as well. So, maybe not as quite as good as Grand Reunion, but good. And I would like to see this be like the final win condition of a deck instead of Dragon or Scatterdoor's Bidding. So yeah. Anyways, that's it for this one. Because this is already like 45 minutes long, I'm gonna do the top 10 worst cards in a follow-up video, because otherwise this is gonna be like 2 hours long. So see you guys soon. Stay tuned. To be continued. Part 2. Review the Fuzz. Top 10 worst cards is what's coming up next. See you soon.